So our next session is equally informative and interesting and thought-provoking. So let's move on to our next session, which is how the office is changing, workplace trends 2022. So let me just introduce our panel members. We again have with us Mr. Ramesh Nair. He was conducting our last session. He will be conducting this very interesting session as well. So all those who are joining us now, let me introduce our session chair for this discussion, Mr. Ramesh Nair, CEO India and Managing Director Market Development Asia Colliers. Mr. Nair, with a diverse experience of over 23 years, has been focused on driving transformational change and delivering real estate solutions to domestic and multinational owners, investors, and occupiers across India and South Asia. And at Colliers, he is overseeing the overall direction, strategy, and growth of the India's business. He also drives business development and key relationship management across APAC. And I welcome again Mr. Nair to chair this session. Let me also introduce our eminent speakers. Let me welcome Mr. Amit Grover, Executive Director, Office Business DLF Limited, a seasoned commercial real estate professional with more than 24 years of experience. Amit Grover has served at vital positions in Ansals, Cushman and Wakefield, Citibank CRE, and has been with DLF for more than 17 years now. He has driven entire growth of DLF's office business and leads planning, strategy, marketing, leasing, building operations, safety, sustainability, and compliant leadership for DLF office businesses. Our next eminent panel member, let me introduce Amit Ramani, founder and CEO, Office Space Solutions. Amit Ramani started Office with the vision of revolutionizing the office space delivery ecosystem in India through technology. He has 2 decades of experience in areas of strategic planning, design management, workplace and business process improvement, Six Sigma-based strategies, and facility planning. His strong background has allowed him to provide innovative and complex project services to multinational corporations. He is also an active member of RICS, CS, and NASCOM. Our next panel member, I introduce Harsh Lamba, Country Manager, India, Vice President, Sales, South Asia, IWG. Harsh Lamba leads the IWG business in India. His professional experience spans 20 years in a variety of industries, from hospitality to international trading to financial services in India and in the United States. He has more than 22 years of experience in leadership roles, and in his past assignments, he has been instrumental in growing the business, driving innovation, and building customer value across South Asia. Our next and final member for this session is Mr. Ritesh Sachdev, Senior Vice President and Head Commercial Leasing and Asset Management, TATA Realty and Infrastructure Limited. Ritesh has more than 2 decades of experience with both service providers and developers. He has led teams across India and collaborated across multiple geographies and real estate markets globally, sharing his expertise and knowledge for the benefit of his occupier clients and organizations. Ritesh is responsible for leasing and managing the commercial assets of Tata Realty across the country. Besides maximizing the operating performance of commercial portfolio, Ritesh is the brain behind sales, leasing, innovations, and strategic business development. So this is our entire panel. I now hand it over to Mr. Nair and request you to take forward the conversation.
Thanks, Sapna. Welcome to this panel. Let me start with you, Amit. The sector saw a lot of demand revival in 2021. 2020 was definitely not such a easy year. We saw in 21 leasing, our research numbers were around 33 million square feet of leasing happened in 21. Can we safely say that the office sector is out of the woods? Amit?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ramesh, and good to connect with everyone, my colleagues on the panel. Hello, everyone. Right. I think, you rightly said, Ramesh, that 2021 had given us some signals that office is here to stay with strength. And the demand is an outcome of how the industries which we are serving are growing. So fortunately, COVID had brought more business to India, largely driven by digital transformation of the global companies. You know, if you look at just the NASCOM figures, NASSCOM has predicted that the Indian IT industry will grow up to 300 to 350 billion, and have projected that the growth of 10% per year will continue for the next 5 years. In 2021, 140,000 people have been freshly hired by the IT companies. And for 2022, the top 5 Indian IT companies have already announced that they'll be hiring 100,000 people. We know the historic rule of 100 square feet per person. So 100,000 people means 10 million square feet. Now, it's debatable in the current world that, okay, not that 100,000 people entire will come to office or be a hybrid and all that. But having said that, two things which will continue to impact the stronger demand next 2 years, that even for de-densification requirement for the next year or so, even if 50% of the staff comes back, they would need the 100% or double the space of pre-COVID, more from a de-densification requirement, plus the additional 100,000 new hiring which is happening. Now, the way I look at it, the way the virtual world was giving in and work from home was carrying on, everything was going okay except one thing. And that one thing is bringing the industry back, and that was attrition. So if everything was going well, life could have carried on the way it was. But in last 6 to 8 months, from across industry segments, one data point started coming in that, something is not going right. And which was this increase in the attrition rate, which in the IT/ITES industries went up to 30 to 35%. And it is an industry which is a young industry. On one side, imagine 140,000 people have been hired in 2021, and none of them have come to office. So look at the amount of disconnect between the leaders, between the connect with the physicality of the office, connect with the brand for which you get hired. And that's kind of concerning the leaders. So that's why we're suddenly seeing a reverse voice, whether it's the global top companies or Indian companies. And everyone is now waiting for the wave 3 of COVID to settle, which thankfully is kind of reasonably appearing to be settled. We would hear a much stronger return to work, and that will bring back the confidence in the office business, as well as future demand. And this is just IT. So let me also say that beyond IT, the other industries have also been growing. So pharma has been growing, automobile has been growing, fintech has been a big sector which has been growing, and textiles and others have been growing. And also the startups, which is also a big number, which it is estimated that almost 1.5 lakh jobs have been created in 2021 from just the startup industry. So there is more data points to believe that the demand is going to come back stronger, as the third wave of COVID settles up.
Thanks, Amit. Very well summarized. Harsh, what are some of the occupancy trends you've been seeing in your centers?
Connection flicked in and out. Hi, everybody. Good to be on this panel. Ramesh, just like every other company, we were impacted by COVID, wave 1 and wave 2. We were emerging well out of wave 1, in last quarter of 2020. And then in 21, we got hit by wave 2, and it was quite devastating, just like for everybody else. And we then saw growth coming out from the month of end of July, August. And we've been doing very robust growth since then, month over month, multiple digit growth in terms of single high digits and medium single digit growth every alternate month. So we've started the year pretty well in terms of occupancy for the network. And when you look at our whole network, we saw slower growth in our centers, which are in the major metros, especially in the CBD areas. We saw greater affinity for occupancy in the suburban centers, and we saw a good pickup. In fact, our business was quite stable across our centers in tier 2 cities. So that sort of gives us an idea in terms of where we need to look at in terms of growth. People are definitely looking at work-life balance. They are definitely wanting to reduce commute. So suburban areas and tier 2 cities would be our focal focus for this year. So occupancy is good. Unfortunately, I can't give you the number where we are right now because we are a traded company, but we've seen robust growth, and we are really well set to hit pre-pandemic occupancy and revenue levels very soon in 2022 here.
So we did, for the audience, we did a survey on what the occupancy was. We looked at most of the players. So more than 15,000 rupees per seat, current occupancy was around 73%. Less than 12,000 rupees seat was around 80%. And non-metro, surprisingly, occupancy levels were around 85%. So this was the numbers we saw. Ritesh, let me come to you. There's so much of talk about the hub and spoke model of Office. And are you seeing that in India? Are you seeing Tatas have a huge presence across the country? Are you seeing that happening?
Ramesh, thank you, and a good evening to all of my panelists. Delighted to be sharing this space with all of you. I'd keep it brief, Ramesh. The one thing that perhaps I can start with, two or three things actually, and I'll take a second to build up to what Amit had mentioned earlier before I come to this, that over the last perhaps 2.5 years, everyone's had to look at forced work from home. We all know IT-enabled services have been the predominant absorber of office spaces in India, and how liberal, I'd say, policies with regards to certain days of work from home and so on and so forth, they always existed. Perhaps the first time that we've had an opportunity where the world or global employees have been forced to work from home. There is a lot of data. It's very fluid. A lot of things will need to be emerged before anyone perhaps can. But the one thing for sure, Ramesh, is everything's changed to an extent, and it's a reboot truly of sorts. Coming back to the hub and spoke model, till about 2020, you know this better. Till about 2019, we had the best perhaps year in the history of commercial real estate in India. Till about 2020, we had talent following work. We've now got work following talent. You would have seen in the Americas, perhaps amongst the largest market, 1/5 of employees quit, and that has been a revelation. Hub and spoke model, the following are my comments and my thoughts overall. We all know.
Ritesh, can you say that? What did we say? American 1/5? What were we saying?
I'd say almost about 1/5 of employees, in a way, resign and quit their jobs, Ramesh, in 2020 So that was a revelation. So almost about
Amit touched upon the same point. It could be because of lack of connect with the brand, with the company, loyalty, all that has been impacted sitting at home. So I think it's a very nice data point. 1/5 of the people quitting jobs in US.
That's right. On the hub and spoke, I think we all know the advantages. Again, this is very debatable, Ramesh. Picking up to what I'd say Harsh mentioned earlier, Amit mentioned earlier, the benefits perhaps of perhaps having multiple centers, either by way of collaboration, or the benefits of getting all of your employees at one location. I'd say fairly debatable. Also with regards to efficiencies of scale, the savings and operations, etc., that you're able to get. So I'd say fairly debatable. At the moment, however, I'd say for multiple reasons of data security and so on and so forth, it definitely has got prominence. What's also happened is, I'd say, co-working flex operators and their growth that we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years, that has definitely given this a fillip. So has that increased? I'd say over the last 2 years, I'd say substantially. Is this something that is due to stay over the next, I'd say, 2 years, given the multitude of cultural, social factors that Amit brought about? Fairly debatable. I would believe for reasons of there not being enough stock, compliant stock. This model is due to change even further. Amit, Ramesh, back to you.
Got it. Ritesh, next question to the other Amit on the panel. Amit, we've known each other since your first center. Earlier this week, you told me you've crossed 100. And you told me that by end of this year, you're actually looking at 200 centers in the country. So doubling your spread across. So where are you seeing the demand to kind of grow at this space? What are the kind of locations, demand drivers? Want to hear from you.
Sure. Glad to be here, Ramesh, and thank you for Realty Plus for pulling this together. Ramesh, I think there are 2-3 things that are fundamentally changing, right? I think one, clearly companies are grappling with this new normal, right? Obviously, it's a journey, it's not an end as yet. But one thing is clear, that the hybrid model will look at a distributed kind of an approach for almost all companies, right? So that's driving clearly the demand of this whole idea that one central location is kind of a done deal in my view. I think companies will have to provide multitude of locations to employees, because employees are very clear that they want that choice, right? I think, and that choice is going to be at the employee's behest, right? So clearly that's something which is changing, and that's the reason that it's driving that demand. Second, I think clearly the enterprises, which were the kind of fence sitters pre-COVID, are moving into flex and co-working in a big way. So they are clearly adopting this model. And I think at least for the next 2-3 years, till they are able to figure out their strategies, this will continue to drive demand for companies. So if I was to look at the total demand pool today, almost about, and I can speak for myself, and which probably is a reflection of the industry, about 30% to 35% is coming from the enterprises. About roughly 40 to 45% is coming from, I would call it, mid-corporates to SMEs. And the remaining 10-15% is coming from startups and so on. Now the 30-35% didn't exist pre-COVID. It was very small number. So I think it's clearly shifted in that direction. In terms of locations, Ramesh, I think we clearly are seeing that cities like Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, and Mumbai are seeing rocking demand right now. I think Bangalore demand, I've never seen the level of demand that's driving in Bangalore today. I think in terms of metro cities, they are doing extremely well. And then Delhi NCR and Chennai are certainly a close follow-up. And then obviously Kolkata is a bit smaller in terms of size and scale. The third, the tier 2 and to some degree tier 3 right now, but mostly tier 2 cities, I think the demand as a percentage is at least 5x of tier 1 metros. Obviously the scale is much smaller, but the demand there is going extremely strong. Many cities include Jaipur, Indore, Kochi, Coimbatore, I think are rocking right now. And as I'm a very strong believer of tier 2 cities, and have been so for the last few, almost a year plus. So I think the tier 2 city demand is driving some of this as well. As far as I think why we believe in it, I think one, because of the network. I believe that if you think about fast food, you think about McDonald's. If you think about work, you will think about AWFIS, right? And that's our journey of 200 to 400 centers in the next 3 years. And clearly the distributed work will be an amalgamation of people going to central location for a day or two, working near home for another day or two, and maybe working from home for a day. And every large occupier that we are talking to today are very clear that the employee is going to be the center of making that decision of what and where and how they want to work, because the workspace and the work have kind of gotten displaced. So I think from that standpoint, now it's about, and clearly I am biased because I come from this industry, and I feel that that's where the network will play a big role as the expansion continues for companies.
Amit, I want to ask all four of you this question. This is not about your occupancy rates or what rentals you are getting. This is about re-entry. Amit, out of whatever your 35 million square feet plus portfolio you have, what is the amount of employees coming back to work? I know you're more or less fully leased out, but what percentage of employees are coming as of last week? What was the re-entry percentage in your portfolio? Because I'm sure your property management teams give you that data on a weekly basis.
Yeah, sure. So, one, it's interesting that it's not consistent across cities. That's interesting data point which started coming in about in the beginning of the second year itself. And there
Amit,
also, if you see...
Amit, my question is last week, because things have suddenly changed because the numbers you were hearing in third week of December suddenly changed in the third week of Jan. So what is that re-entry percentage? And you said it varies city to city. So very keen to hear the numbers from you.
So Hyderabad was about 7-8%. Chennai at some point in time reached about 15%. Gurgaon is between 15% to 17-18% range. And obviously a lot of companies were almost geared up to start coming from January onwards. And then the third wave did give a pushback, I would say about 2 to 3 months at least. And then what's interesting is it varies, as I said, city to city and company to companies. And it's also coming from the trends in US. You see there's a big difference between the West Coast return to work percentage and the New York.
What have you heard percentages in West Coast versus New York?
Right. I mean, so in my last visit to US in November, the variation was the West Coast was still sitting at sub 10%, and New York weighted average was about 50 to 60%.
Wow.
With the banking and the consulting companies going as high as 70 to 80%. And the tech in US, in New York also was low, and that's why the weighted average was at 60.
And I think India being such a tech-driven office market, similar numbers for West Coast. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Exactly. And that's why you see there's a difference in the return to work between Chennai and Hyderabad, because Chennai is more connected to the East Coast and Hyderabad is more
financial services. Wow. Very good insight.
So that's why we see a combination. And Bangalore and NCR market reasonably have a combination of both. So you will see a weighted average impact of the same.
1 second, I'll come back to you. Amit, I'll just come back to you. I'll just get these numbers from the others also. Ritesh, what are you seeing in your portfolio?
Similar data pointer, Ramesh, not very different from Amit, given the fact that we've got a portfolio in Chennai, Gurugram, and of course, Mumbai. The financial services cities, or the cities that are servicing financial services clients, Mumbai and Chennai had a higher hunger, if I may, of return back to offices, so we were at, I'd say, before the third wave, looking at almost about a 20% plus, whilst Gurugram stayed a bit low. So agree with Amit's numbers on that.
And now this 20% has come down, you say, again.
Now the 20% is, it's come down, but steadily going up from the earlier return back of April. We're now hearing return back as early as March, early, Ramesh. So there is a definite uptick, a definite fillip across all our locations.
Got it. Amit and Harsh, not your occupancy rates, but re-entry percentages.
Go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Again, Ramesh, we've seen tremendous move back to our spaces after the third wave. Pre-third wave, December was single digits to low double digits across the country. But now we've seen a huge momentum of people coming back. It's just been like a hunger, to just get back to office. So in cities like Bombay, Chennai, Bangalore, we've seen people coming back and momentum going in double digits week by week. Now, so we're seeing about 50, 60, 70% occupancies across these cities. And
wow.
North has been a little muted, I think, because Delhi was in lockdown and there was a little slow, come back to work. Tier 2 cities are, people coming back to offices is above 60-70%, and that's been stable, for them throughout a large period of 2021 and now. But major metros, Bombay, Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, we seeing people surging back to offices, at least for our network. So there's great comfort in that.
Amit?
So, Ramesh, we track this on a daily basis, right? And, in the third wave, we actually were very surprised that the occupancy numbers, which in the first and the second completely dropped, right? In the third wave, there was almost very muted impact, right? Maybe if it was X, then it was X minus 10%, right? Today, what we are seeing, since I look at it on a daily basis, Pune, Hyderabad, Delhi and Chennai are all today at 48%, right? This is physical occupancy, nothing to do with our contractual occupancy. Mumbai, Bangalore is very interesting. They're at about 25%. So they're half of these other cities. Again, we personally think the other statistic, which is very interesting, is that the enterprise ITITS business, right? If they have taken space with us, it's sub 10%. If it's a new age business, it's almost 80-85%. So any of the new age, without taking any names, any of the new age unicorns, it's in some cases it's almost 100%. So it also depends on the company. Wherever the space take up, even with the ITITS company enterprise that they've taken new space take up, there the occupancy is really high.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
So this is not just city driven, it's also the company scale and size and the journey that they've been on.
And makes so much of sense because what Ritesh and Amit said, theirs is only enterprise clients. Correct. And people are just not walking in, while new age companies, which you and Harsh just mentioned, there seems to be massive amount of, Amit, why is this happening?
I logged in.
Is it because is it because health, safety, global protocols, or huge things? Here we're talking of 48% versus 10%.
So I think I can comment, and I was talking to some of the global players. As you rightly said in one word, the larger enterprise companies have a global HR and a health and wellness policy. Right, so they cannot have a different approach in US and a different in India, right? And their sensitivity and their whole the best workplace and best workplace survey requirements and being the best employer benchmark and expectations are much higher, which are largely dependent upon employee survey and feedback. And every big global employer at this point in time also wanted to be good because you don't want to be perceived as not sensitive to the employee, which can be a different scenario with the startups. They are more focused on giving the employees the ESOPs and saying this is the time to grow and not the time for a comfort zone. So the culture and the voices in the startups are completely different than the mega corporations, and that's, I think, is driving this difference in the occupancy.
Amit, let me ask you the next question. How do you, as a developer, give confidence to your occupiers to get them back?
So absolutely, because for us, 90% of our customer is a global enterprise customer. So we have to go with their expectations on the best on wellness and the employee health and well-being. So the first and foremost thing as a preparation for on the return to work is the indoor air quality. Because when the employees will come back, they want to feel safe. And it's not about feeling safe, it's our job to deliver a safe environment. And the most important factor when you come back to office, it's a confined space. So even if 10 people are infected or they're just carrying a milder, symptoms around, they can impact the 100 people around. So it's very important that the air change within that confined space office is more. It has to be enhanced. We've installed MERV 14 filters, which are attached to the AHUs, and then these are recommended by global ASHRAE requirements. So they're supposed to filter the air every time there's the air change. The fresh air intake.
Amit, how much does it cost per square foot basis to get these MERV 14 filters? Like there are many developers listening into this panel. If they want to upgrade an old building with MERV 14, how much will it cost?
I think the cost is not much. I mean, I would say a cost would not be more than 20 rupees a square feet on the whole thing. But I think it's more to do with the intent and the speed and also the technical know-how to do it. You'll be surprised. I'll share with you an interesting data point. We used to be challenged many years, all these years in our office business, that why is our AHU room bigger? That's reducing the carpet area of the office premises. You know what? The very fact that the AHU rooms DLF always get bigger helped us to today induct MERV 14 filters. And if your AHU room is smaller, then you can't introduce another filter because it needs that much of space to be inducted here.
So you planned for a pandemic like 20 years back and been charging them.
Planned for the unforeseen, if I say. Yeah, but that's what it is. And it's so much become about the indoor air quality because that whole touchless thing has toned down after the global guidelines that the more spread will be through the human to interface. And then the other factors, like you do all this and you go for certifications, because see, simply put, if an employee comes to the office, he can't smell the air different whether you got a MERV 14 installed or not. So one is installing all these things, then going to the accredited bodies like Wellbeing Institute and getting those well certification, going to British Safety Council, getting them to audit and getting what we call it as a COVID assurance certification, so that when they come in, you've done work on the technical side, but then you also got the certification to give them the comfort that it's a safe place. That's what we're doing on.
Harsh, how is the startup boom happening? A couple of the other panelists also spoke about startups. What are you seeing?
Ramesh, we're seeing startups, a lot of interest across the country when they come and see the workspaces and the services that we offer. But we haven't seen a great uptake, unfortunately, from the startup segment. And like Amit had mentioned earlier, they are seeing about 10 to 15% usage from startups. Ours is also in the same range. I mean, we would probably be high single digits only. So
is it because your product caters more to enterprise than startups, or?
Probably so. Plus, again, the price point also would be another factor, and again, there are many options that a startup would have. And at most times we're seeing that they go back to their, financial supporter or, somebody else who has some, passive space available for them to work out of, at least initially. But there is an interest for them to come and tour and see the workspace and the types of services that we offer. But the uptake is slow. Got it.
Ritesh, there's so much of talk about tier 2 cities. Last time I heard talk about tier 2 cities was back in 2008, just before Lehman, and then it kind of died down. And now we are beginning to hear again over the last 1 year. As Tatas, would you look at tier 2 for development?
Ramesh, very debatable. You know this, Amit will know this, all of us will know this. I'd start with perhaps that one statement again. How talent followed work and work's following talent. Amit spoke about the hiring that most IT firms have done. The war for talent, Ramesh, will continue. I don't see this dying down, at least for the next couple of years. I'd leave 2 or 3 things on the table and then we can speak about those. Debatable again. A, as I mentioned, fight for talent. B, the reverse migration that has happened from a tier 1 to a tier 2, tier 3 locations, and how there was a migration earlier. If you'd like to sort of grow and more opportunities and be close to the leadership, and therefore you had to be in the HQ in the tier 1 location. That has, if I may say, Amit mentioned he's a big fan of tier 2, tier 3, but I believe that growth in tier 2, tier 3 locations will perhaps continue, and of course the flex operators had led that. 2 additional things for us to think about. A, I'd say the social nature fabric of the employable population today, and therefore would that drive them to tier 1 cities locations by way of, there is a lot that needs to be done with regards to infrastructure overall in tier 2, tier 3 locations. Ramesh, that is one. Second, we know this, we've done this. Availability of compliant real estate solutions, I'd say, in tier 2, tier 3 locations. And therefore, I said the flex providers' growth and vis-a-vis, I'd say, end users, and therefore end users' ability to take, if I may say, non-compliant real estate solutions at certain price points. Government's doing its bit. There is a lot that the government has to do still with regards to building that infrastructure so that the tier 2, tier 3 cities can work in a way as extension of tier 1 cities. So with all of these things, I mean, it's interesting. There was this one survey that was done where almost about 50% plus, the survey that was done, almost about 150 plus occupiers, and about 50% of them were using flex in their tier 2 locations, flex offices in their tier 2 locations. So fairly interesting. How long will this stay? I don't know, but I see growth over the next couple of years for sure. Ramesh?
Very interesting. Ritesh, Amit, would you encourage Amit Grover and Ritesh to go do buildings in these tier 2 cities? Because I'm sure when we met earlier this week, you were so bullish about some of these tier 2 cities. You particularly mentioned about Jaipur, for example. Would you push Amit and Ritesh to go there? Because I totally agree with what Ritesh said. I haven't been to a tier 2 city in a while because there is no demand from our clients. It's limited. But my experience many years back tells me that it was exactly what Ritesh said. Compliant grade A space was limited. So what would you advise them, Amit?
So, Ramesh, I have no leverage over Mr. Grover and Mr. Sachdev at all, right? So I don't know if, they'll listen to my advice, but I think the reality of these cities, we all sit in our tier 1 cities and make a judgment call. I was in Jaipur yesterday. You would be shocked at the level of development that's happened in that city, the level of roads that are in that city, the infrastructure, the hospitals, the nightlife. It's incredible, right?
Just a very high level question. Amit, is there a market like Gurgaon, which has like a 50-60 lakh square feet demand every year? How much would you put Jaipur demand at?
So Jaipur demand today, I think, just as one operator, right? And I'm sure the other
Not just you, I'm saying the overall demand in the market. Like I was quite shocked to, I used to always think Ahmedabad used to be a 4 to 5 lakh square feet market. Just found out that Ahmedabad has become a 12 lakh square feet market. So it's kind of demand is doubled. So
Ramesh, at least for Jaipur, Indore, Coimbatore, Kochi, some of these cities, I personally believe that it will double in 2022. Whatever is the base, It will double, right? And I don't have the exact numbers with me right now, but it will double from the size we are at. I mean, as one operator, we are looking at about 5,000 seats in a single city like Jaipur. 5, and I don't have compliant buildings. There are no compliant buildings in Jaipur.
Maybe Amit Grover should build a couple of buildings on his own. Maybe that's the opportunity. But we look at some of the big tier 1 developers. I remember DLF going to trying to get into Goa, trying to go to Chandigarh, which didn't work out. RMZ going to Cochin and Calcutta, which didn't work out. Embassy trying to go into Coimbatore, which didn't work out. I'm talking 2008. And now Amit Ramani is like trying to encourage all of them to kind of go back.
See, Ramesh, if I may just add one. I think the challenge, and I'm not going to comment on the specific developers, all of them took their tier 1 strategy and implanted it on tier 2. That won't work. And even today, that will not work. I can give you that in writing.
Maybe smaller centers, 2-3 lakh square feet.
Correct. You have to tune it to what the city requires. It doesn't require a 1 million square foot campus. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge. I think you have to have a completely different tier 2 strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Great,
different model and a different cost structure and everything. It's like, once you're used to developing a Toyota, you'll say you have to work backwards and then say, okay, let's do Maruti now, right? So it needs a different thought process, different cost structure, and different level of specialization in these two segments, and therefore a completely different strategy.
Sapna, we'll take a couple of audience questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, sure. One question that has come is, what are the opportunities for investors? Are there any opportunities for retail investors, specifically HNIs, in the growth story of co-working?
Amit, you want to give it a shot?
Sure, answer is yes.
Please call Amit and give him some money. He'll give you good return.
Sure.
Yeah, Ramesh, I want to add here. In fact, Sapna, I just want to add. In fact, there's a big opportunity because what we've rolled out globally and in India now is what we call a franchise strategy. So just like QSR, anybody from either within the industry or from outside the industry has the opportunity to invest and become part, the co-working industry with the global player. So we're very, very focused on this. We're pushing it. We've had good success. We've got about 3 to 4 deals already signed with about 20 workspaces coming up in the next 3 years. And I think that's a good opportunity for anybody who wants to get in on the first floor with a global workspace leader like us. So that's a great opportunity for investors.
Okay, fantastic. Because we have generally seen institutional investors in this segment. So, yeah. Another one is what about the mid-sized players? Because it's believed that we are entering a time of super consolidation in this segment. So, what about the mid-sized players? Where they go from here?
Amit, you want to take that?
So I think there is room for all of us to coexist, right? I think the consolidation, I think, is overplayed in at least our industry. The difference, I think, what will happen is that there will be a clear segmentation between the national branded players versus the mid-tier who are more localized. So I think there's room for all of us to coexist. It's a 1 billion square foot industry that probably grows at about 10-15% every year. So my fundamental take on this is, in a growing market in a country like India, there is room for people to provide a serviced office or a flex office or a managed office. And I think there's room for multiple players to coexist.
Okay, fantastic. One last question I can take is that the budget did not directly give any incentive to the co-working segment or the flexi space segment, but the incentives given to the startups, is it going to have some kind of an indirect benefit for commercial real estate?
Amit and Harsh, you want to take that?
So, see, I think the budget, in fact, I think did a lot in multiple different dimensions, right? It did a lot for the infrastructure. Now, as infrastructure expands, it creates opportunities, employment, growth, the whole story of tier 1, 2, 3, all of that we've been discussing. When that happens, automatically it will generate more opportunities for co-working, flex, real estate development, many, many other sectors, right? So I think fundamentally, not directly, but indirectly it did. As far as the startup ecosystem goes, I think the government has been fairly pushing a strong agenda for the last 5-6 years. And again, they did well for the startup ecosystem. But I think the startup ecosystem is a very small employer even today, even though it's growing very fast, right? So I think fundamentally infrastructure investment is going to lead to a lot more positive outcomes.
Okay, fantastic. So infrastructure is something which is going to drive the growth for real estate. Ramesh, I'll hand it over to you now for a summary of this entire, what are the valuable takeaways we have had from this discussion?
Very, very interesting insights from all the 4 speakers. Amit Grover spoke about how COVID has actually helped increase tech demand. NASSCOM projections of 350 billion. He spoke about how NASSCOM's forecast was a 10% per annum growth, but last year, the numbers which came as 19% actually. Just last year, the growth, 140,000 people hired in 2021 freshers. He spoke about 100,000 people being hired already in 2022. New hires, de-densification will drive demand for office space, increased in attrition. because employees don't feel connected. Very good insight from Amit, because employees are working from home, lack of connect with the bigger brand. Amit also spoke about how fintech, pharma, auto, startups all are contributing towards growth. He also spoke about how just the startups have created close to 1.5 lakh new jobs. Harsh spoke about how the second wave impacted the business, but since then, since July, August, he's seen significant amount of interest back. Occupancy increasing, very good insight in suburban centers and in tier 2 cities. Now, Harsh mentioned it. Ritesh spoke about how this is a forced work from home, not that everybody wanted to work from home. 19 was the best year. Work following talent. Previously, talent was following work. Very interesting line. 1/5 of the people in US have quit jobs. Compliance talk, Ritesh felt, is still a challenge in India. Amit Ramani spoke about how companies are struggling with the new normal still. Hybrid model will lead to a distributed mode, which is already happening. Multi-location needs to be provided. Employees are demanding that. And he was quite bullish on cities like Jaipur, Indore, Kochi, and Coimbatore. Re-entry, very, very interesting numbers from everyone after the third wave. This is, we have some of the biggest flex space operators and the biggest developers in the country on this panel. So Hyderabad 8%, Chennai 15%, Gurgaon around 16%. Amit compared it to West Coast and East Coast, fantastic comparison. Mumbai, Chennai before third wave had touched 20%. But now that's kind of come down. But a lot of people today who are talking about in the last 2 weeks, the panelists mentioned who are talking about work re-entry in April are now saying re-entry in March. Harsh spoke about how his numbers are still around close to 50%, but tier 2 it's gone up to even 60-70% of re-entry. Again, Amit Ramani spoke about how Pune, Hyderabad, Delhi it's touched close to 50%. Mumbai, Bangalore at 25%. So there's a very clear differentiation. Enterprises less than 10%, startup, new age, smaller companies operating flex, all much more. Amit, again, Grover spoke about how indoor air quality has become the most crucial aspect. He spoke about how DLF is providing MERV 14 filters. It doesn't cost much. Touchless, lesser important today than air filtrations, but he also spoke about how certifications have become very important. Harsh spoke about how price points are impacting startup demand. Ritesh again spoke about how war for talent is driving demand for office space and locations. Reverse migration and war for talent will eventually get demand into tier 2. Although the two big developers didn't sound very bullish on tier 2 to start developments. I thought Amit Ramani gave a fantastic idea. Don't try and replicate the million square feet models. Maybe try and do the small 200, 300,000 square feet kind of models. 50% of tier 2 companies with a presence in tier 2 were using flex. Demand, Amit made a bold prediction that demand in the tier 2 cities is going to double in 2022. And Harsh gave an interesting insight on how he started the franchisee model. So any investors here, it's a good opportunity to tie up with Harsh and team. And Amit Ramani spoke about how it's already $1 billion industry and he expects it to grow by at 15% growth rate. So back to you, Sapna.
Well, that was very clear and crisp way. Mr. Nair has just summarized the entire takeaways from this discussion. So fantastic! I think quite a thought-provoking discussion that we had. A lot of data points that we collected from this discussion. Thanks, Mr. Nair, for that. Conducting this session so superbly, and Mr. Ritesh Sachdev, Mr. Amit Ramani, Harsh Lamba, and Amit Grover for being here and sharing your experience and expertise and also your valuable opinions on how this segment is going to go forward. So thank you so much for being here with us, sharing your time and sharing your expertise. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.